5,000 tons, 2,900 feet, 5 feet at a time over 23 days. That's how a lighthouse was moved. I'm, of course, talking about the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. My family's lived on Hatteras Island for many years, and I visit frequently. Today, I want to talk about a brief history of the lighthouse, the problems that came with trying to save it, and how exactly it was moved. When we look at the history of the lighthouse, we have to go all the way back to 1870. That's whenever the lighthouse was constructed. This lighthouse is the tallest brick lighthouse in the United States, standing at 198.5 feet tall, 269 steps from the sidewalk to the lens room at the top. Whenever the lighthouse construction was contracted out, a local contractor took the job. He then trained 100 locals as his workforce and paid them $1.50 a day. The unique features of the construction of the lighthouse include the double stacked walls with spoke-like supports going around, and the entire structure was built on a floating foundation. Now, this structure stood for 130 years without issue. The only problem being that the quarter of a mile that stood between it and the seashore was slowly shrinking over the years until it was soon within 100 feet. With that came an issue of if the lighthouse needed to be moved or if it should be kept exactly where it was at. In fact, the community and the locals surrounding the lighthouse and everyone on Hatteras Island was split on this idea. Half of the population wanted to leave the lighthouse exactly where it was at, build another groin wall, which is a metal and stone structure extended out into the ocean that helps ease the erosion at any specific point along that seashore. The other half were in favor of moving the lighthouse along with all of its outbuildings and historical structures to another place so that it could be preserved and not at risk of falling into the ocean. The National Park Service took over the ownership in the mid-1950s to 1960s of the lighthouse, and they were also in favor of this movement. In 1988, a report was done by the Academy of Science titled Saving Cape Hatteras Lighthouse from the Sea, Options and Policy Implications. The report covered 10 options to try to save the lighthouse, and it recommended that moving the lighthouse would be the most cost-effective and the most sure way to save that structure. Nothing was done at that point in time. Some funds were tried to be raised, but since the community was split on the subject, they were still considering building a fourth wall. Now, in 1996, the University of North Carolina did an independent study and review of the report done by the Academy of Science. They also believed that the best option was to move the lighthouse and recommended that the county and National Park Service begin the process of getting the money and getting that in order to do so as quickly as possible. So that's whenever the decision was made to move the lighthouse. Now, when it comes to moving a lighthouse, the plan was simple to begin with. The plan consisted of lifting the lighthouse off of its foundation, transferring it onto a transport system, moving it along a pre-prepared road, and from there installing it on the new foundation. Now, according to the National Park Service, this was done by replacing the original foundation with temporary supports, then placed a steel beam mat under those supports. Upon that steel mat were placed hydraulic jacks that were built into the main beams that allowed the structure to be raised 6 feet at a time. Now, with that structure raised to that 6 feet height, they were then able to insert roller beams and rollers, and that would allow the structure to roll. On June 17th, 1999, the structure began its 2,900-foot journey. There were 3 zones of hydraulic jacks used to adjust the structure to maintain balance, and working in conjunction with 60 monitoring sensors on the lighthouse kept the lighthouse balanced at its great height over 5,000 tons as they began rolling it towards its new destination. The means for moving the structure were hydraulic clamp jacks that were clamped to the steel beams that then pulled the structure 5 feet at a time over the course of 23 days. On July 9th, 1999, the lighthouse was carefully placed on its new foundation, a 60 by 60 steel reinforced concrete slab. The other historical buildings had been previously moved and were awaiting the arrival of the lighthouse to be placed, putting all the structures in the same relative positions as when they were originally constructed. With the lighthouse placed once again a quarter of a mile from the seashore, just as it was whenever it was built. So in conclusion, built in 1870, a quarter of a mile from the shore, reduced to less than 100 feet. The community disagreed strongly about how to save the lighthouse, but all agreed that it needed to be saved. In the end, it was decided that it would be moved. It was moved 2,900 feet, along with all the surrounding historical outbuildings, and they were all positioned exactly in relation to the shore as when it was originally built. The ocean may be unstoppable, but human ingenuity should never be underestimated.